All right, we're back to the line now, and we've all just watched Gwyneth's interview with the mayor. A couple of weeks ago, she mentioned, I spoke with him as well, and he said he expected more incidents like the one outside of Jackson Wink, where armed counter-protesters showed up. You might recall that. So, Tom, I want to ask you right now, your sense overall of what you just heard and how the mayor's handling this situation. Tough enough? Not tough enough? Is he thinking ahead clearly enough? What was your sense of it?
Well, he's the mayor, so he gets to make the decisions. There were two things that really jumped out at in my mind. One was seeking permission of the artist as a reason to not take the statue down. That raised a huge question mark with me as far as assigning a decision to committee and then assigning a decision like this to the artist versus what we see in Santa Fe with Mayor Alan Weber just making the command decision. I don't think there was any consideration with regards to, how things were funded or, how the artist felt or anything like that. So I thought that was really interesting. The second was, and he came back on this, is when he talked about changing freedom of speech and changing the right to bear arms. At first, that hit me really kind of strangely, but he came back later on and he provided some needed clarification as far as really applying the same rules to protests that we see in school zones and churches and things of that nature. So I thought that that particular approach was good, but clearly those decisions are made up in Santa Fe.
Yeah. Hey, Crystal, the idea that the mayor put out there, that this idea of over-policing that we've been stuck in for the last bit of time as a reason to pull back and really kind of go the other way on this. How did that strike you? Because I something about that really didn't quite ring for me. I'm curious what you thought of that.
I was going to say, did you see my reaction? And I cringed a little bit.
Right.
And the reason why I reacted in a way where over-policing, I don't think was the right word, is
right.
We had a crime problem. Did we forget about that in Albuquerque, where, we had to call in city councilors to literally walk our neighborhoods to see broken glass in our driveways? Mm-hmm. And we also had to ask why, at the same time, there was a shortage of cops. The definition of over-policing in his eyes, I think, is a different definition in mine. Mm-hmm. And I will heavily criticize the Community Action Organization. There's no doubt in my mind, and I forgive me for forgetting the name of the new department, but even though I might not remember the name, I know that I'm not terribly a fan of it. The reason why I'm not is because it absolutely cuts out public-private partnerships out of nonprofits that do a lot of these services already. And when they said that they're going to be redistributing millions of dollars to internally to create this department, they're going to get that money specifically from nonprofit budgets. Mm-hmm. And they're not addressing the core problem, which is the violence of these individuals with mental health, with mental health issues, addiction, et cetera, homelessness. It starts within their families. Mm-hmm. So they're putting Band-Aids on the branches of the root of the problem. And I'm very worried that the department will not actually execute this. And I'm worried, I'm worried about the nonprofit that I'm serving on very heavily, Domestic Violence Resource Center. I'm afraid for SANE, the sexual assault nurses, that might lose a number of calls, which they're funded by CYFD and APD. Mm-hmm. They're going to lose a lot of funding because of projects like this. And I understand that the intent is there. But again, I think...
Crystal, if I can get a favor, let me get Sophie in here real quick.
Sure. Yeah.
So if I got a question again, this clearly the mayor's talking about the use of force in the gremlins in his background. And my question is, is the mayor relying too much on this idea? Has he swallowed the APD line that use of force was such a problem, we now have to go completely the other way now? Is there something lost in the middle, in your view?
I think it's a work in progress. And so I think I have to sort of reserve judgment on some of the elements of it. Mm-hmm. But I do think, frankly, that the community safety program is a response to some very direct feedback that the mayor's office has received, both from the community and from police officers, where we have seen over time, and I mean, I think you could frankly date this back to the Reagan administration in this country, but we've seen over time that more and more we rely on police officers to be everything. It always, I sort of both laugh and cringe every time somebody calls 911 because their Domino's pizza hasn't arrived on time. But people really are viewing the police as a panacea for everything. And at the same time, we have members of the community who are saying, I would never call 911. I would never call the police, because what I see is my neighbor, my family member. We just had this situation happen here in the greater Albuquerque community. I can't trust that in this situation, which requires more nuance, more training, et cetera, that if you send APD in, that my family member, my neighbor won't be killed. And so I think that context of concern about how policing has been used and the burdens that have been placed on police officers, and therefore also the lack of resources in some other areas, it's just more appropriate, for instance, for social workers to deal with social work level of problems than it is for APD officers to deal with them.
And I understand that there is that the police sometimes have a power trip. There's no doubt about that. But I don't understand why an entire department is being created when we already have partnerships within APD that's actually working. Like the crisis intervention team, that's a separate department. They refer calls to domestic violence advocates. They'll refer to CYFD. They don't just leave people hanging. And so that's why I understand that the police do have an abuse of power to a certain degree. But that means proper.
I wouldn't call it an abuse of power. I think they just have way too much on their plate, and the proposal from the mayor, while it still needs to be extremely vetted out, and reporters have pointed that out, it's still a very good idea and something that kind of formalizes that process of that art of law enforcement.
We'll have to leave that there. There will be so much more to talk about in the coming weeks, certainly. No doubt part of that's going to be the new program the mayor talked about, the creation of the new community safety department he talked about with Gwyneth. Lots of implications there. Who's going to pay for it? Where's the money going to come from? And what are the goals? We'll see how that all plays out. Be sure to check it out on NewMexicoInFocus.org.